Chancellor the Honourable Robert French AC, Deputy Vice-Chancellor Mr Tayyib Shah, academic staff, distinguished guest, and perhaps most importantly of all, graduates, together with your family and friends, we're all gathered here this evening to acknowledge and celebrate your achievements. Graduates, I'm sure that you appreciate that you wouldn't be here this evening receiving your degrees without the support and encouragement which has been provided by your family and loved ones during your academic journey. They are therefore entitled to bask in your reflected glory, and I'm sure that you'll expressly acknowledge the support and encouragement which they have provided in the celebrations which I hope will follow this evening's ceremony. Before going any further, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Whadjuk people who form part of the great Noongar clan of southwestern Australia. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge their continuing stewardship of these lands. As has already been mentioned, the Whadjuk people gathered and met on the banks of the river they know as Derbarl Yerrigan, and which we know as the Swan River, quite close to here for tens of thousands of years before colonisation. So it's appropriate for us to acknowledge that we follow in their traditions on their traditional lands. I went through a very similar ceremony to the one that we are conducting tonight, and I sat in the seats in which you graduates are sitting when I received my undergraduate degree a bit over 45 years ago. I'm sure to you 45 years sounds like a couple of lifetimes, but I can assure you that it passed very quickly, almost in the blinking of an eye. Like many of you, the years of study which preceded my graduation had their ups and downs. Happily, most of the downs have faded from memory, and most of the ups are not appropriately recounted on a formal occasion such as this, or indeed anywhere, at least while the people involved are still alive. I hope that you all enjoyed your experience at this magnificent university, and that you're taking away from this university much more than the knowledge gathered in lectures and studies on your journey through life. Universities have always been much more than places where people acquire knowledge. They've always been, and hopefully will always remain, places in which people can gather in a collegiate and collaborative environment to undertake study and research and to learn from each other human skills and characteristics which will enable them to contribute to the communities which they will join. So this evening, of course, we celebrate the fact that you've passed various exams and other requirements to qualify for your degrees. Perhaps at least as importantly, we celebrate the fact that you have had the opportunity to engage in the varsity experience at a world-class university and hopefully have emerged with a range of skills and qualities which go well beyond the materials which you've assimilated in lectures and tutorials. I graduated in law and have always been engaged in the law of some form or another. As a lawyer, I've spent much of my professional career working very closely with those engaged in business and commerce, which are, of course, the fields in which you are now qualified. At least for those of you who are graduating for the first time, tonight might perhaps be described as the end of the beginning, in the sense that you've completed the first chapter in a field of study which will qualify you to enter a career in business or commerce, or perhaps undertake further studies. By contrast, I've reached a stage which might perhaps politely be described as the beginning of the end of my career, although I hope I've got a few good years left in me. Disciplines like law, business and commerce are not ends in themselves, but rather are means to an end. That end is a prosperous community in which all live in a peaceful and ordered society, governed by the rule of law, enjoying the fruits of their labours under systems which provide fair and equitable rewards for those labours. It may not feel like it to you, but you are graduating at a most propitious time in a most propitious place. Western Australia has enormous commercial potential, not just because of its exceptional natural resources, and not just because of its geographical location, which places it within the time zone which contains the world's strongest developing economies, but also because of its human resources, in the form of graduates like you, who will utilise the skills and qualities you've developed to participate actively and effectively in the global economy. Of course, you'll be aware of some storm clouds which might be reducing your optimism, including, perhaps most significantly of all, climate change, and international community which is less stable than it has been in the past in recent times. The consequences of climate change were tangibly evident to me when I was in Sydney yesterday, when air pollution reached record levels, where visibility was reminiscent of places like Beijing or New Delhi. I don't mean to diminish the significance of these things, but they need to be kept in perspective. When I was sitting where you are now in the early 70s, the Cold War was at its height, and tensions in the Middle East regularly erupted into wars, as they have continued to do, unfortunately, for much of my life. In the 70s, nuclear warfare was considered a very real possibility, and Australia had just emerged from a war in Vietnam, which not only caused the loss of many lives, but great divisions within the Australian community. My point is that the challenges which you face need to be viewed in the perspective of the challenges which have always confronted people commencing their journey through life. Notwithstanding the challenges to which I have referred, and many others of course, I genuinely believe that your opportunities are as great as the opportunities of any graduate at any time in history. Australia has enjoyed unbroken decades of continuous economic growth, and there's no reason to believe that trend will not continue. You're extremely well placed to take advantage of the opportunities which that growth will provide. There's a passage in the Bible which can loosely be translated as, "Much is expected from those to whom much is given." The opportunities and successes which you will enjoy create a corresponding obligation to contribute to the communities which you will join. And of course, some of those communities will be outside Australia. Wherever you might end up living and whatever you might end up doing, I'd encourage you to actively look for ways in which you might make your contribution to improving the lives of those who have not enjoyed the advantages which you have enjoyed. But perhaps most importantly of all, it's essential that you take some opportunity to have some fun along the way. When you're choosing a career, look hard for something you like doing, because if you like doing it, you're more likely to do it well, and if you do it well, appropriate remuneration is likely to follow. I'm sure you'll have learned in the course of your studies that risk and reward are correlated, in the sense that very often the highest rewards follow the greatest risks. Of course, I don't mean to suggest that you should be cavalier or reckless, but as the cliched saying goes, life is not a dress rehearsal for something else, or perhaps using a more contemporary acronym which you might understand, YOLO. It's very likely that chance and luck will play a significant part in your futures, as they have in my past. I enrolled in law for no better reason than the fact that I was keen on a girl who was going to study law, and law became my life. Chance is by its very nature random, but luck can be improved by evaluating options and making reasoned and considered choices, including choices as to your friends, because they will shape your life and your happiness in a very profound way. Through your studies, you've been taught the power of rational, logical reasoning, and you should use that power to make reasoned decisions in all aspects of your life and not just drift along and leave too much to chance. So with these few loosely connected thoughts, I wish to offer you again my congratulations to you all upon your educational achievements, my best wishes and good luck in your future careers, and thank you for your attention.